Hi everyone, this is Becky Willard of Vox Fox Productions, and thank you so much for joining me. I love helping independent artists kind of navigate this crazy music business. And one thing that I found is that all of us, the first time we decide, oh, I'm going to go to the studio because I've written a song, we have no idea what goes on behind the curtain. We see little bits here and there on social media, or we might see little clips from documentaries about the stages of creating a song from your first, written idea to the final product we might hear on Spotify. There's really a lot that goes into it, and there's an order to it. And I kind of got this idea of laying out the different phases. Oh, it's actually 6 stages of music creation, not 5. I fixed it later. I have been watching a lot of cooking shows on YouTube. I love to cook, and I have been cooking as an adult, like really getting better at it over the past 20 years. And when I watch TikTok cooking videos, I'm like, what are they doing? It's like they really want to make the video really snappy and fast. And so, of course, it's edited that way so that you don't really see that, when you cut up garlic, it's actually really hard and it takes a lot of time and it sticks to your fingers and stuff. And so you might not see that, but also there's a lot of shortcuts that they'll do. They kind of throw in, well, for example, like if I'm making a stew, you could just throw all of the vegetables in and then the broth and cook it all up, and eventually it's going to taste like a stew. But you're not going to have the depth of flavor if you don't saute the onions first and get them nice and caramelized, and then add the garlic and maybe the herbs. There's just an order to things that really help bring depth to the flavor. And it bothers me so much when I see TikTok or even on Pinterest, I see cooking videos where they're just kind of throwing ingredients in all at the same time, or like one pot pasta dishes, like they boil the pasta with the sauce, which in some cases that works great, but not in all cases. In some cases, it makes the sauce more starchy. And anyway, I felt like that is so similar to the process of creating music. We all want to have the final product sound amazing, and as if we're not just Joe Schmo in town, but we're like a real artist. We want to be taken serious. If we do things out of order, you can end up with a product that sounds pretty good and maybe not noticeably wrong in any area. But if you really take the time to do things in the right order, it can make the difference between like, wow, why does that sound so good and mine doesn't sound that good? So I wanted to go through these different stages, talk about what happens in the different stages and why it's important to do those things in those stages. Stage 1. This is where you're creating the bones of the song, the lyrics and the melody. I find that a lot of people, once they finish writing a song, they're like, oh, okay, I'm ready to go to the studio. I think it's really helpful to sit on it for a little bit, spend some time performing it at open mics, even get some professional feedback on the song. Just make sure that you're not jumping the gun, that you're not rushing the process of going to the studio and having the song produced just because it's done. You can really let a song, I again kind of compare it to food. If you let it marinate a little bit and really simmer in its sauce, there's a chance that it's going to be better for it. So make sure that the lyrics and melody, that you're really saying what you want to say, that the melody really has the payoff that you want. Finalize the form of the song. You don't have to come up with like intros or anything like that, because that's the job when you're working with a producer. But making sure that it's not too long, that it doesn't have too many verses or weird sections that don't make sense, where you might lose the attention of a listener. If it's like verse, chorus, now here's this other verse that doesn't really sound like the first verse, but it's not a bridge, and then there's another chorus. If it's kind of random, you're going to lose your listener. And as a creator of music, that's the last thing you want, right? You want people to listen and connect with your music. Be sure to get feedback from professionals. And again, I'll say get feedback from your audience. Go to open mics or when you perform live, say, or you can even post it on social media. I've just written this song. You don't have to do the whole song, just do a verse and a chorus and get some feedback and see what your fan base actually thinks of it. Stage 2. Okay, arranging and production. Now, when you might come to someone like me, a producer, with the bones of your song, the first thing I'm going to do is start working on the general idea of the song. What's the genre? What's the sound palette that we're going to be using? And I usually ask for reference songs. If you have songs that you've been listening to that you're like, I want it to sound pretty much like it belongs in the same playlist as these 2 or 3 songs, that's really helpful for a producer like me. Because when it's just a bare bones song, just lyrics and melody, and maybe you've played the guitar with it, I might be hearing it a totally different way. And once in a while that does happen where I'll hear a song and think, oh, it's supposed to be this kind of, I'll hear the final product in my head as if as if it was my song with no direction. And then if they say, oh, but I want it to sound like this, and I'll be like, oh, whoa, that was not my first instinct, but hey, we'll make it work. Make sure that you're kind of making those decisions beforehand. And that will help you also find the right producer. There's a lot of great producers online, even in your area probably. But they all have different strengths and weaknesses. They all have their own kind of character and flavor. So you want to seek out the right producer for your particular project. A third thing, make sure when you're working with your producer, I always say, okay, let's make sure this is the right key in the pretty early stages. Let's make sure it's the right tempo. Let's get the right chords and make sure it has the right emotion. That's part of the process that I would go through. And then, of course, going on and selecting instruments and sounds, and then giving the song its overall shape for today's listeners. And what I mean by that is today's listeners, you basically can't have an intro longer than 5 seconds. If you have a 4-bar intro, that's probably too long. If it's, up to 10 seconds, that's too long. Because people will skip. If they're streaming music and they're just, hanging out with their friends or they're doing their homework, if they hear a boring intro, they're going to skip it if it's up to 10 seconds. I promise you. So you want that first moment of your song to be something that grabs their attention instantly, and a boring long intro is going to make them want to skip. Now, that being said, sometimes I don't come up with the intro exactly as it ends up until we've kind of finished. We're like almost towards the end of the mixing phase, where I might be like, you know what, that intro's too long, or we just need a little something. I just did this for a song just yesterday. I've been listening to a mix, and the intro wasn't long. It was only 2 measures, but it was boring. And I thought we just need something more right there. And I just got an idea for something and added it. And I was in the final stage of mixing before sending it off to master. So anyway, it's not that is the kind of thing that you absolutely cannot change later. And all of these things actually, like sound choices, instruments, there's some flexibility. I have definitely recorded vocals for people, kind of gone through the song towards the later phase of mixing and been like, you know what? That one particular synth sound is driving me nuts. It's not working. I need to find something different. And so I might flip through and find a different synthesizer sound that fits the song better. So there is some flexibility there. But if you, let's go to the next stage, stage 3. If you show up at the recording studio and you're like, oh, can we do this faster? Oh, can we do this slower? Oh, can we do it in a different key? There's a chance that you as a vocalist are not going to have marinated with the song if you're making changes right there in the recording session. That is I think, one of the most common mistakes. It's not that it always turns out bad. Don't get me wrong. But if you make a habit of doing that, you may find that after a while, you'll say, you know what? Every time I record, I feel like I'm just kind of barely there. I need a little more time to sit with an instrumental in the right key or at the right tempo before I go in and record. So in stage 3, recording, this is a really important phase, and I cannot overemphasize how important this stage is, because you can't take a really boring vocal performance and make it amazing. You can't take a guitar track that was recorded with the lawnmower playing a lawnmower in the background and really make it sound clean and pristine. There's going to be compromises if you have not taken proper care for this phase right here. So for your vocal recording session, make sure that you feel prepared. Make sure that it's a good day, that you're not just getting over a cold, or that you stayed up all night the night before and just woke up 30 minutes before your session. Make sure that you come to your session prepared, warmed up but not over warm, so that your voice tires out quickly. Make sure your instrumentalist, if you're the person that is playing guitar, or you're bringing your guitarist friend to play, make sure their strings are fresh and new and in tune, and that their guitar hasn't been sitting in the trunk of their car all day. Little things like that are not little at all. They really add up to making sure that you've got your instruments, including the voice, their best possible state at that recording session. And make sure that your recording engineer is taking enough takes so that you have some options, but not burning you out. Sometimes people will take takes just to take takes. They'll be like, oh, here's take 14. Go ahead and sing that again. Sing it again. Sing it again, without any reason. That can get really tiring. And when we get into the next phase of editing, that person, whoever's doing the editing, is going to be like, why are there 20 takes of this vocal? They're not really going to want to listen to all 20 to make sure they're getting the absolute best. They might do it for a while, but eventually you're going to be like, I'm not going to listen to all these takes. I'll just listen to the last 3. So that's what I usually do, is make sure that I have at least 3 or 4 really good takes. So if it's taking us, the singer, a little bit of time to get a particular passage, once they get it, then I'm going to be like, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Now I've got 4 really good takes of that particular section. But all the stuff where they were kind of figuring it out, working it out, I might keep it just so that we have documentation of that. But you never know. You just never know what you're going to want to use. And so I like having the options so that in the next phase of editing, I have lots of options to play with. Okay, so stage 4 is the editing. Now, clean editing makes for easier mixing. Editing is a skill, just like chopping garlic. It really takes time to get better at it. You have to practice. So if you're kind of new at learning to record your own vocals, or record anything for that matter, and you feel like the editing is just the kind of thing that you dread at night, then that's understandable, because it is really tedious. But once you get good at it, you can get faster at it and you can move through the editing a lot quicker. And I actually enjoy doing it. I have the kind of brain that is creative. Like literally I have a right side and a left side dominant that really like to both be active and sometimes at the same time. And so sometimes my left brain is like, cool, let's go in and meticulously make sure this is perfect. But then when I listen back to this seamless edited vocal, my right brain is like, oh, listen to that. That's amazing. It sounds so great. So, anyway, it's something that takes practice. It's really crucial though, and I will just add a little plug for making sure that the breaths in a singer's vocal are edited really cleanly. Those are the most noticeable edit mistakes that I hear in independent artist music. You just really want to make sure that's nice and smooth. Stage 5 is a picture of me. This is where we equalize and balance things. Everything has been recorded and edited well. This can be a really fun and creative stage. You can take things that sound like good and make them sound like, oh, that is amazing. And I really think mixing is really, really fun, especially if it's a song that I've produced, because if I'm a producer, I'm being creative. I'm using my own creative ideas. And to me, I don't really feel like my ideas have come to fruition until I hear them mixed really well. And so I kind of love that process of going from my idea and watching it, hearing it transform. But you don't have to mix. If you're the one that's arranging and producing, you absolutely can outsource the mixing to someone who is more skilled than you or has a little more experience. There's nothing wrong with that. And as a matter of fact, some people argue that it's better to have someone else mix your productions. That's up for you to debate and decide. Okay, in pop music, all across the spectrum, whether you're talking acoustic pop, real minimalistic pop, to epic, cinematic ballads, vocals are really the most important part of a mix. The mix is where you really shape how loud and soft and where in the sonic space everything is landing. So when you're listening with your headphones and you hear something over here, you hear something over on this side, or you hear an echo that goes like this across the sonic space. That is something that was decided. Someone did that. Someone created that movement. And that's the mix engineer that does that. So much fun. If you hear a song, you're listening to your mix and you hear it and the bass sounds really muddy, or the overall sound is kind of thin, that is something that is your mix engineer's responsibility. And it really takes, sometimes it can take time to get a mix to really come together. I often send my clients a mix and say, okay, here's our first listen. And I know in my brain that we're going to have some tweaks that we need to make. Some that I will have noticed when I go and listen in my car and do the car test, or some that the artist will have noticed, or things that we both decided. And it's not always a right and a wrong. Something needs to be fixed. Sometimes it's just a matter of taste. Like, I really want to hear that guitar solo or that guitar part really loud. And yeah, I know it's kind of as loud as my vocal, but I want it there. That's kind of a personal taste. Or it might be like the opposite. Ooh, I want that cello happening, but I really want it to be almost barely noticed. That's great. That's all being creative. And with your mix engineer, you can make creative decisions like that. It makes it really fun. Stage 6 is the mastering engineer. Okay, mastering is the final stage. You can't fix bad recording, bad editing, or bad mixing in a master. The master is meant to take something that already sounds good and just give it some plumpness, some fatness, some sparkle. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't mean that they can't fix things. Sometimes they do. I love my mastering engineer because he will usually tell me if there's something I need to fix in the mix. He'll be like, hey, can you go cut such and such on the lead vocal? And I'm always really happy to get that feedback from him. But it's better for me to do it in the mix than for him to try and do it to fix it in the mastering. If you think about it like this, I don't use Photoshop, but my understanding is that if you're creating like a graphic, there's usually layers, and you can go in and say, oh, I need to do the background layer. I need to sharpen the tone of the background layer. But at some point you fuse all of those layers together and now it's one picture. And so you can't go back in and fix that layer, right? So it's kind of like that, where the mastering engineer only has access to the sonic spectrum of the full mix. They can't go in and say, oh, I want to just fix this one little thing on only the lead vocal. Now they're also really, the mastering engineers are going to bring it up to the commercial standards, the commercial level. So when I send a mix, it's usually a little bit softer than what maybe a song on the radio would sound like, or like if you have Spotify fired up on your phone and then you play the mix that I just sent you in your email, it might be a little bit softer. The mastering process brings it up to that commercial level. Use a skilled mastering engineer if you or your artist have the budget for it. I really recommend it because it can be the difference between like, yeah, cool, that sounds good, to like, oh my gosh. And we all want our music to be, oh my gosh, right? So that's it. I hope you found this really helpful. And thanks for sticking with me through this whole video. Since you stuck with me, I want to make sure that you know in the description below, there is a link to an artist branding workbook, absolutely free. Go ahead and click on the link. I'll send you that workbook, and I hope it helps you refine and define who you are as an artist and help you on your indie artist journey. Take care.